Madam Secretary?
Mr. Farrier is absent. Mr. Lewis.
Present.
Mrs. Perry is here. Mr. Rogers. Ms. Silva.
Here.
Present.
Mr. Tavares.
Here.
Chairman Vinatiero.
Present.
And Chairman Furtado is also.
Madam Secretary, first order of business.
Public comments and communications. I don't believe we have it in. Anyone here in the audience?
There are no public comments and there are no communications. Therefore, a motion is in order to proceed.
So moved.
Motion's been made,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Sulo. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
New business. Approval of minutes, September 20th, 2023, and January 31st, 2024.
I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes of September 20th, 2023.
Make a motion.
Mr. Luis makes a motion,
I'll second.
seconded by Mr. Rogers. Madam Secretary, roll call vote.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mrs. Perry votes aye. Mr. Rogers.
Aye.
Ms. Silva.
Aye.
Sulo.
Aye.
Tavares.
Aye.
Vinatiero.
Aye. Motion carries. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes of January 31st, 2024.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Rogers,
I second.
seconded by Mr. Tavares. Roll call, please.
Lewis.
Aye.
Mrs. Perry votes aye. Mr. Rogers.
Aye.
Silva.
Aye.
Sulo.
Aye.
Tavares.
Aye.
Chairman Vinatiero.
Aye. Motion passes. Next agenda item, please.
Discussion and vote to expand city council from 5 members to 7 members, requested by Commissioner Tavares.
Good evening, everyone. Early on, when we started this committee, I had brought up about changing the city council members from 5 members to 7. We had a little discussion and then we tabled it. I gave it some thought and I'm thinking, nobody likes change. You know, the change is a hard thing to get over on. Look how long it took us to go from city manager to mayor to make that change. This, in fact, will change the operation of our government here. The reason why I'm doing it, or why I wanted to see it done, is not something that I just thought of a couple of weeks ago. This is something I've been thinking about for years. I could never understand how in the city of East Providence, you have a 5-member city council. The most any individual in East Providence can vote for is 2, one at large and one in the ward. So they could never vote for a majority. So if you should happen to, your 2 votes, when the 2 guys who went on the power side of the minority, of the majority, your vote made your vote null and void. And then I started looking around. I looked at all the cities, different cities, and just about every city in the state of Rhode Island that has a mayor council form of government has at least 7 members or more on their city council. The reason being, I think, is that when you have 3 at large and 4 wards, that's 7. Every time you vote, you could vote for 4 members. You could vote for 4 members of the council, which means no matter what vote they take, or who's on what side, or whatever happens, you'll always have at least 1 vote to speak up for you. That the people elected, the council people elected to represent you. Without that having an input, I think it's only fair to the people of East Providence when they vote, knowing that their issues would be heard or their side of the story will be told. I also looked around and said, last meeting we had comments made that, well, nobody would want to run at large because it's too expensive. And I have to disagree with that because there's grassroots campaigns all the time. You know, I don't think that's an excuse for not having an extra councilman. And also, I was told that that's only one more vote need one more vote for majority. But the difference is you'll be able to vote for all four of them. You'll be able to vote for four. Because if you could only vote for two, you're not going to get nothing. So and what we do tonight is that I'm not looking to change anything tonight because I know we can on this board, on this commission. We can't change anything. All I want to do is put it on the city council's table for discussion. I think the people of East Providence need some consideration about having their vote count and have it be an effective vote. So that's the reason why I put this on. And so, you know, so if you vote in the positive, to send this to the council, don't feel like you're changing anything or, oh, I don't want that. No, let the city council have the discussion. Let them put it to the people. Let them decide about what kind of representation they want in this city. I think it needs to go forward. And because we're a mayor form of government, but the city manager form of council. And that's what it amounts to because they thought every city in the state has more than 7 members on their council. Let's be representative and let's move it forward. That's all I'm looking for. With that, I'm saying I want to make a motion. And the motion is that changing the city, I'd like to make the motion that the city council be expanded to 7 members. And send it to the council with the hope that they'll put out a statement. They'll put it on the ballot, put it on the November ballot, and let the people decide what they want for government. That's my motion.
A motion has been made to put forward Mr. Tavares's proposed amendment. Is there a second?
I'll second for the purpose of discussion, further discussion.
Motion has been seconded for discussion. Any discussion?
Through the chair.
Mr. Rogers?
I don't see it in the minutes, and I do see that it was tabled the last time it came up. Did we miss something in the minutes, or did we refer this to minutes reflect that we would vote to table it unanimously? Did we refer it to the law department through the chair, Dylan? Did we refer this to the law department for any further research?
That it was tabled. I don't, to the extent that there are.
Okay. All right, the minutes, you're correct. The minutes reflect that there was no, that there was no referral to the law department, but I was making sure that we didn't miss anything. Do you think, again, through the chair to the solicitor, do you think it is timely, in a timely fashion, to discuss it now, or would there be more research needed because of the staggering of the votes if it did pass, or if it did pass for recommendation to the council to put on the ballot?
And it that content. In terms of presenting. I also understand that he's contemplate, the fire, but that is the simplest.
One further thing I'd like to say on my motion, by having 7 members, there's more of a chance of having diversity on that council. If you look at that council, there's nobody who looks like me on that council. And it's very rarely do we have anybody that looks like me on the council. I think by having a 7-member council, there's a good shot that we get some diversity.
The chair,
Yes.
may I ask the solicitor a question?
Yes, you may.
Mr. Solicitor and Miss Solicitor. Dylan, it's kind of like a two-part question. I'm just wondering the best way for us to look at this. My one question is, when we present this to the city council, would we have to state that it would be, they would run at the same 4 years, or could we stagger? Because we talked about that in the past, like staggering. So meaning if we had, I don't know how you would do it, if you do like 3 and 4. So 4 run for the 4 years, and then in 2 years or 4 years, the other, like you rotate, I think it would be every 2 years, right? It would be like, you'd have the election. So it would be a 4-year term, but in 2 years, you would change half of it. So my question is this something that we should consider presenting to the council that way? Is that in what you've seen in the past in other municipalities? Is that something that we should consider?
I think it's a good question. I think we would actually have to answer prior to drafting ballot question. I think it would be appropriate for the presentation to be very generic, and then if each of you feel want to have that conversation, be it during the public meetings, or if they are your representatives generally, communicate what your concerns are and thoughts are on it. The way I understand the structure of these recommendations to function, I would like to maintain this meeting. Just a bullet point. I think wants the council to consider 7 months. Full stop. Fine. I think additional questions you have have to answer them before it goes to a ballot question. They can be brought up in the context of that hearing with the council if the council wants to entertain it at all. There are some matters where perhaps the council says, full stop, I'm not interested in whatever position over the course of our meeting. And so there's not a lot of debate in that. They're not interested. But if they are interested in what we do here tonight doesn't preclude any of you, even or individually, you see fit.
Actually, I think what I'm looking for, that every election, everybody has a chance to vote for 4 people. So they might have to run all 7 every 4 years, which means every 4 years, the people in East Providence get to make a choice.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, my only concern about that would be is if you wipe out all 7 at once and you're starting with 7 brand new people, you're trying to reinvent the wheel, because then you have a municipality where nobody knows what they're doing. And there's something to be said for having people that are in position to be able to build off of. So I understand we could change all 7, but I think at least if you're changing them staggered, then 4 of them already have their feet wet. They're already, even if they were 4 brand new ones, they already could give some guidance to the 3 new ones that are coming in. Where you're talking, that's my only concern with it, is you're talking brand new straight, because I understand what you're saying. And I like the idea of it. I really do. I like the idea that I think as a city, I think representation is very important. I think having extra people is very important. I think it would stop a lot of that, I got my 3 votes and I'm not going to talk to you mentality, because I don't want, and we all know that can happen. So I like that, but I also want to be proactive about it. I want to think of, well, what happens if we have a mayor that, we could even have a reelected mayor and a council of 7 people that are brand new. I can see that slowing a municipality's progress down, where if you at least had somewhat of a stagger, even if they were all brand new, it's a learning curve. They're helping each other. That's my only concern about that. I might be wrong about that, but that's where I'm thinking.
You make a good point.
Chair,
Chair recognizes Commissioner Perry.
I have a question for Mr. Tavares. Now, you're mentioning 2 extra council members, correct?
Yes,
Would they be at large?
yes. It'll be 3 at large and 4 full wards.
Okay. So now there's a potential to have 4 people from 1 ward on the council. If you have the ward person, the at-large at ward, from a ward, and the other 2 elected, they could be all from the same ward.
That's possible. That's possible, but if you have 4 people who are elected, that means people have faith in them and that they're going to do the job necessary. And they're running at large. They represent the whole city, not any one ward.
Any other comments? In regards to Commissioner Silva, stagger idea, I introduced the staggering of the school committee, so you know I'm in favor of that portion of it. And Commissioner Tavares, if the terms are staggered, the representation of the individual could still be 4, because they could have voted for the 2 that are still continuing in office.
That's why
So that you could still have that 4 representation.
it makes sense.
And I think what Julie was really aiming at here is, you know, in the last election, we had the potential possibility of a 100% brand-new city government, 5 new school committee members, 5 new city councilors, and a new mayor. And there would have been absolutely no continuity on that first day in office. And could have been the 11 brightest people in the community. But still, they'd have a heck of a learning curve because they don't know what the history is. They don't know how the mechanism operates. There needs to be some institutional knowledge. And I think staggered terms preserves that. No one gets an advantage over anyone. They just stagger. Those of us that are old enough can recall when the school committee was staggered and they were all at large. But the community felt that was not meeting the needs because, again, history, as Mrs. Perry mentioned, you can get multiple representation from the same ward. And the school committee got a lot of representation from one of the wards. And those that didn't get it felt upset about it. And they changed the charter to ward election from at large. So, you know, the wheel turns. And there's nothing new, I don't think, in politics. But if there's no further discussion, motion to move the matter?
I move the question.
There's been a motion to move the question. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Silva.
Nay.
Mrs. Perry votes aye. Mr. Rogers?
Nay.
Silva?
Aye.
Mr. Sulo?
Nay.
Mr. Tavares?
All right,
Chairman Vinatiero?
Nay.
The 3-4 vote.
I'm sorry, Dylan, could
After motion of the 3-4 failure.
motion fail to pass? Thank you. Madam Secretary, next item.
Discussion and vote to expand city council. Oh, I'm sorry. You just read that.
compensation.
Discussion and vote to amend the approved recommendation of Article 3, Section 3-3, compensation requested by Commissioner Lewis.
Good evening. I'll try not to take up too much time. Going over this for the past month or two, I came to the conclusion that I don't feel going from 90,000 to 100,000 is sufficient enough for the elected seat of mayor. I initially wanted to come in at 120,000. I thought that that was more in line with what neighboring cities are doing. If you've been paying attention, Tucket, I believe, is raising the salary of their mayor from 80,000 to 150,000. I don't think our mayor should be $50,000 behind a neighboring city. Also did some research in Warwick and Cranston and Johnston. I feel we should be at 120. I did end up landing at 110,000. In hindsight, I probably should have stuck with my gut at 120,000. I don't think we can have a position of mayor here in the city at 90,000 when we have a city clerk at 87,000. Math doesn't add up. Even at 100,000, the math doesn't add up. We've got to take into consideration cost of living and the fact that $90,000 isn't what it was today, what it was 5 years ago. So that's why I made the motion.
Motion has been made by Mr. Lewis. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Mr. Sulo. Any discussion?
The chair. This Pawtucket went, in my research, from 106 to 150. They're considering that, and Dylan, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure it went through yet. They have a larger population. The background of the people of the city and what they make is similar to East Providence. Majority of the people in the city of East Providence don't make that for a salary. Those people who make less, some much less than 100,000 or 110,000, would be paying the mayor's salary in the city of East Providence. A cost of living, if you're using it as a cost of living, when you're giving a new salary to somebody new, it's not a cost of living move at that point because that person hasn't received a salary from that city yet. So cost of living goes up from when you pay that person 100,000 to whenever you want to raise that salary. That's a cost of living. So I'm against this. I think $100,000. We had 4 people, I believe, who ran for mayor this last time, all willing to take the salary, which was less than 100,000. So I think there are people in our city who have the ability and who have the desire to run this office at this city hall for 100,000. So I think, and we had some discussion on this in the past, and I think we should stick with that salary at this point in time. And if we ever want to raise it, cost of living or whatever, it can be done in the future. If I could ask a question to the solicitor, can a cost of living be put into the charter without a number saying that in 2 years, the city should review to see if the cost of living, God knows, maybe the economy will, be wonderful and the cost of living isn't going up, which it will, but can you put that provision in as we wish to give this new person or the existing person, whoever has that position in 3 years from now, a cost of living increase after a review, after they've received it?
Depends on how you want to define the cost of living, how enforceable it is. Something like that should increase or it should be tied year after year. Similar price index. That could actually imply all something. But however you want to organize it, the only suggestion would be, I think this is similar to discussion we had on the previous question regarding the details, and I'd be happy to present them to the council. Is if we don't specify the actual figure, like consumer price index, and if say cost of living, who determines what that is? I don't know. So let's say I'm the mayor, and I know that I'm entitled to cost of living. It says so, and the council doesn't like me very much, so they give me. How do I argue? So something like the consumer price index. Maybe there's an average cost. Anything that I could.
Well, people, if you're done, people who receive Social Security, they calculate a cost of living. This year it went way up because I am retired, and our cost of living went up. I think it's 3.2% or something like that. So that figure must come from somewhere, and there's nobody that I've heard that argues it because it's a cost of living. Your salary is going up. Now, whether a mayor thinks that they should get a cost of living that's 20%, to me, that's neither here nor there. If I were the mayor and I felt I needed a cost of living or I deserved a cost of living increase, I probably would fight for 10%. But is it valid? I could fight for 50%. Is that a valid argument? And, the council or whoever decides the cost of living amount should argue that point at that time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other discussion?
Through the chair.
Mr. Sulo?
Looking at it as well, with the comment made that we have four candidates willing to take the salary to run the city. It's when you look at things in relativity, where the city clerk's salary is $87,000 and the mayor of the city is making $3,000 more. The mayor of the city, again, our cities, and we're voting for we're speaking about the position of mayor, not one mayor or another mayor, or it's the position going forward, especially of our city. Again, willing to take that salary to run the city, going forward. Looking at the city of East Providence, we have to make it, again, going before the city council. So make it a desirable job. Somebody that wants to say, again, cost of living going up, jobs are going to be, salaries will be going up. So we may have the best candidate taking at somewhat of a pay cut to run the city, the best qualified person, not willing to do the job. There's a lot of people willing to do other jobs, but that are underpaid or that are undercompensated for the work that they do. Just looking at through the charter, what the responsibilities of the mayor of a city of East Providence should be compensated for what they do, well compensated for what they do. Looking at, and again, in relativity to things, where cost of living, as was mentioned by Commissioner Rogers, that figure of 3.2% must come from somewhere. It has to be a cost of relative to something. And being a position relative to the mayor of the city of East Providence, all variables taken into consideration and with other cities, I mean, that's probably a variable that could be looked at as relative to what compensation for the mayor of the city of East Providence it should make. So maybe that should be something that should be looked at rather than, I would say, being somebody willing to take this. Because I think that would, I believe, in my opinion, we're fortunate to have the mayor that we do, but I think going forward, the group of candidates, I think would attract a group of candidates that will take something that they're duly compensated for.
Through the chair.
Mr. Rogers?
I think it's the opposite, Commissioner Sulo. Somebody who makes $200,000 in the private industry, $300,000, are not going to take a pay cut or are not going to take $200,000 if they make $200,000 to be the mayor of East Providence because they can get voted out in 4 years, whether they do a good job or a poor job. So I think it has a reverse effect. I think somebody who says, You know, I could make $110,000, $120,000 by being the mayor of the city and do it by being popular with the people, by going door to door, knocking on doors, and maybe not having the qualification. I think the people who would take $100,000, $110,000 will take $100,000 because they're in it to help the people. Just so happens the particular candidates, most of them, or 3 of them that I know of, had retirement, had money coming in. So this was like a supplement. So I assumed that if they won and then they lost in 4 years, they still had money coming in. They didn't take any salary cut by running for it. I think $100,000 to represent for my money and everybody else's money in the city is more than enough to run the city of East Providence when we have to pay their salary.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Silva.
If I may, I have a question for the solicitor because I want to go back to when we were going through changing from city manager form of government to mayoral form of government. And if everybody here remembers that time and all the conversations that we had. And one of the things was the mayor's salary versus the city manager's salary, because in reality, the city manager did get paid more than a mayor. Most city managers, historically, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dylan, but most city managers get paid more than mayors in general. And when we were doing the bid to our constituents, asking them to consider doing a mayoral form of government, I remember some people going, well, you know, mayor gets paid less than the city manager. So that was a bargaining chip on getting them to agree to a mayoral form of government. That wasn't my choice because I looked at it different. We're a city. We should be represented with a mayor. We should have a seat at the table. So now we do. We have a seat at the table. We have a mayor. It still is mayors still get paid less than city managers. It's still a statement. My question though is, because I do have a question, even though I took a little bit of time to get there. My question is, when we were doing the last charter commission, and I'm going to ask you because I wasn't at that charter commission, and the discussion of the salary of the mayor came up, what brought the people to the $90,000? Was that because they said, oh, we want to pay them less than the city manager? Or was there some type of calculation that came up with this?
I don't remember what was the winning argument. My memory is that it started much. Significant. Other set mayoral salaries. I do remember significant.
Okay. I also I have a quick question too about when this is put into positioning. All right, when this is brought to the council, regardless of whatever number we vote on right now, and we want to present it in that bullet point document to the council. And when they vote on it, it's got to be sent still to vote to the people, or is that one of the ones? Okay, so that would go to the people. Would that go for this coming November? Are we still in that bracket or no? I don't think we are, right?
No.
And can we be? Because can they vote on their own salary? Because isn't that a charter, like a discrepancy?
You can vote for it, take effect the following term.
Okay.
You cannot vote for it for your own benefit. You can include the mayor, because there is a veto. So there would be no ability for the department that would be an increase for him prior to.
Okay.
Set and effective. Swearing in.
Okay. Because all this talk of cost of living, we can't do anything retro to our mayor. And I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it or does deserve, I don't think we have that power to. I don't think our city council has that power. Is that correct?
I don't think he could because he would have to participate in. So city needs to see it.
Okay. Thank you.
Through the chair.
Mr. Rogers?
The point I got from Commissioner Silva's conversation is a good one. This still has to go to the city council. This particular, talking about the positions, not the people holding the positions of city council now, and the person holding the position of mayor are at odds. And we all know it's for the future. It's not for this mayor. Also, the people of the city were not pro to giving the mayor a lot of money the last time. This has to go to a vote. I think a mayor, when they show what they can do, and the increases come in, I think that's a great thing. But I think we're going to have a problem if we go too high. It's already on the table for 100,000. Now it's going to go to 110. You mentioned 120. I think we're going to have trouble, perhaps having this council put it on the ballot, and then secondly, having the people support it. So I think if we creep up, and I think we all agreed because we all voted on it, that a mayor deserves more in the city of East Providence. I don't think we should jump too high at once.
Any other discussion? If I may. I've given this a lot of thought since I saw it on the agenda. I supported the 100,000, and now we're going to 110. And as Commissioner Luis said, maybe the mayor really deserves 120. We have to look at this without personality. We're looking at the CEO of the city of East Providence. Okay? Person who's in charge of a multi-million-dollar budget, overseeing the public safety, the most responsible position in the city. I don't think you can put a dollar value on it. That could be debated. However, the world we live in, with the cost of living changing by the minute, how do you hold water in your hands? And how do you reach an equitable figure? I think rather than, and this is my personal opinion, rather than putting a dollar value on the position, I try to come up with a mechanism where we could put a value on the office that didn't spell out in the change language, dollars and cents. East Providence is one of 8 cities in the state of Rhode Island. So our mayor is the equivalent of, has the equivalence of, he's 1/8 of the power structure of the cities of Rhode Island. He's not the head of a town. He's not a city manager. He is the mayor of an incorporated city. If we were to incorporate in our charter language that said, as the mayor of our city, he should receive in compensation. East Providence is an average city. We're not Providence, but we're not Woonsocket. We're somewhere in between. I'll say we're an average city, blue collar. What if the mayor's salary was to be the equivalent of the average of the salary given to the other 7 municipalities? If those other 7 communities feel that the CEO of their community has a value of X, the average of that X should be fair to our CEO. And in regards to the cost of living, which again, one group wants to use the CPI, another wants to use another logarithm to figure what the cost of living increase is. We could adjust it annually, every January 1st by recomputing the average, or you could do it every 4 years by recomputing the average. That would be in the language. I don't know if Commissioner Luis is amenable to tabling this so that we could possibly refine the language if this mechanism is amenable to him, or if he would prefer to just go ahead with his motion for the 110.
I'm okay tabling it for further review. I think what you're suggesting is definitely worth looking into. So I'm in favor of tabling it so that we can further research that.
So therefore, the chair would entertain a motion to table this
Yeah.
until our next meeting.
I'll make a motion to table this until our next meeting.
There a second?
Second?
Seconded by Mr. Sulo. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Aye.
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 All right,
Aye.
all right.
Aye.
Sake of case there's a concern. Consider something. Yeah, standard is with the average reasonable person, city, read the agenda and think this motion might happen as a result of presented. It would be my opinion that if the motion as contemplated by itself wanted to be considered tonight, that would be appropriate. I don't know if you have to do- Certainly don't have to. And the motion to table is based on the idea that you want to talk about it and do research. But just for the sake of clarity underneath the open meetings act and for no reason other than if you did want to have some other motion but related to the merits,
Through the chair. I think, Mr. Chairman, I think what you said, and I agreed with it, I agree wholeheartedly with that, that maybe it should be sent to the law department because it involves some calculation for the calculation of the average of the cities, their salaries, what they pay. Was that your intent?
No.
Okay.
Because the way I see this, I call it a friendly amendment, possibly, would be that regardless of whether, let's assume that it's amenable to everybody and it goes, there won't be a dollar value placed. It's going to be an average. We don't know what that average is. And we will have no way of knowing what that average will be if this charter amendment passes and then there's an election. We're looking at 2030 before it takes effect. What year would the election's in 2026. It goes on the ballot in 2024. Would it take effect in 2026, Solicitor?
would take the earliest it could legally take effect is 2027.
2027? So we have no way of knowing what that dollar value will be.
If I may.
Yes.
But we still need to say, to have a vote, that that's how that calculation will be. Am I right or wrong?
Oh, yeah.
Dylan? Oh, okay.
The language would be the average,
Okay,
but we can't put a dollar
We don't
value
know
on
the
it
average.
because that's a moving target. It's changing every year.
gotcha. Now I understand.
Commissioner Silva? I see a question.
Yeah, you do see a question. You know, I guess you know me too well. Yeah, there is a question. My question is, how do we put in the language for the cost of living? Because I see that as an issue. And the reason why it's not the fact of doing your proposed for the average. I totally understand that. And I think that that might be the fairest way of looking at it, because then we might actually find out that it is 120. You never know. I mean, we could figure out, it might be 122. We just don't know. But how do we factor in that right now the way the language is for cost of living? Because right now our mayor is getting 90,000. That's the reality of it. That's what was put in the charter. But if I heard the solicitor correctly, language has to be there. How do, and the mayor can't vote on it. Are we stuck? Is our mayor stuck about getting cost of living until, that's what I'm confused about. That's,
We could incorporate in the language a recalculation date. And we could make that annually, semi-annual, every 2 years or every 4 years, whatever we wish to make it. And then that calculation would automatically take the place of the COLA. Okay, you have to assume, and it's a big assumption, that it probably would go up.
okay, I understand that then. Thank you.
Question.
Commissioner Tavares?
Talk about cost of living. I haven't seen one in 12 years.
Yeah.
Can you work on that, Dylan? Anyways, the average. Supposing the city of Providence, which is a lot bigger city than we are,
Mhm.
they give the mayor an outrageous salary. They bring them up to 200,000 a year. Now everybody else is going to get a pay raise, even though this city, the population might have decreased, but yet they're going to get a substantial pay raise. I don't know if that works out. I don't know.
Right now, Providence being the largest city gets I think it's 157, okay? But there are other communities that are paying less than our present mayor's receiving. So that's why I went with average. You got the lower end going to hold it down, and Providence, and rightfully so, is going to be the high end. And there are other communities in between. Warwick and Cranston, I'm sure, are going to be higher than East Providence is. And I didn't look up all 8, but I think if we went with an average, all communities have to answer to their voters, and they don't want to give away the farm. And, Providence is way more than double the size of East Providence, but the salary isn't. So that's where I came up with that average. And, I don't want to get too confusing, but if you want to throw out outliers, you could say you throw out the bottom and the top and the average of those others. There's a different way to manipulate that calculation.
Mr. Chair,
But I don't want to get it too complicated, Dylan. You have to sleep at night.
figure out how to write that ballot question right now. I think the concern is well founded. I think the response is also, mathematically, any jump would only be 1/8. And at the risk of stepping outside of a professional opinion, I will say, personally, I know city councils. I work with city councils. The risk of any city council dramatically increasing the salary of their mayor is relatively low in my experience. But I do think the concern is well founded, just because it's difficult to predict. At the same time, one of the things that we see in government across the board, this is not just salaries. I usually like to use the example of fines. And my favorite example is there's a fine for illegal service of a liquor bottle. The state set maximum of $1,000 fine, and it doesn't float. There's no way for it to average out. The going price for a bottle of vodka in a club, you only have to sell about 3 bottles of vodka to cover the fine. So people just keep doing it, and the fine just becomes a cost of business, because the fine no longer reflects the actual value. So anytime there's a flat figure in a law, the reality is the markets move faster than laws are.
Through the chair,
Mr. Luis?
for Dylan. Is there a way to incorporate language that if the average went below 100, like we couldn't allow the average to go below 100,000? In other words, we still want the position of the mayor to get a raise. Is there language that we could put in there that if the average worked out to say 98,000, that we could still cover ourselves by putting in a base of 100,000, or is that not doable?
I think the simplest thing to do, imagining writing the charter provision, would be an additional clause that just says something to the effect of, but at no time shall it ever be less than the average of. And I would want to define the mayoral communities, much like East Providence used to have a position that was mayor, but they were comfortable with the president position and they weren't a full-time position. I'd want. I don't believe. I think the city of Newport still uses a city manager, and their compensation is very, very low. But the mayor, I'm not sure there's any compensation at all. So I would just want to catch that in the language, but the intent is very clear to me. It would not be difficult.
Thank you.
Chairman,
Mr. Tavares?
the problem I see is I think we're all basing on what we see what Mayor De Silva does. He's all over the place. He's doing a great job, okay? We see him everywhere. If we start setting the scale up high, and the next election, some stiff gets in, he's going to walk into a nice big salary and not do half the work. And so that's my concern. Is that why are we going to set it so high that whoever runs that job comes in and, I could run for mayor, God forbid, but, and I would get elected, I'd be making some decent money. You know what I mean? That's the only concern I have on it.
Well, let's be optimistic that all future mayors will meet the being set by the current mayor. And as we all know, as the first mayor, everything he does sets a precedent. And so far, he's met the challenge, so. Did we vote on the table? Okay. Next item on the agenda.
Vote to approve editorial changes to the city charter.
Mr. Solicitor, how would you like us to proceed on this? Would you could we go page by page and just accept all the changes on each page? There are 13 pages. Or do you want to go change by change, or do you want to just have one vote for the whole package?
I think the editorial changes are included as a specific red line, and then the conceptual changes are identified in bullet form. Is that correct?
Yeah, some of them.
Oh,
Section.
If we want to go change by change on the red line, I think what I can do is walk the commission pretty quickly through things that I believe are just editorial changes, and we can just try to identify those.
okay.
And I think we probably need a good chunk of votes in order to organize that cleanly. But we do have this. Everyone has the same document, right? Yeah, formatting. So I could organize things by saying things like a motion to approve all the editorial changes on page 1 as identified, and we can kind of go through like that. That might make sense for everyone.
Appreciate the help.
So on page 1, each of the changes presented, I believe, are editorial. We're changing the word town to city, eliminating Providence Plantations, as that term wasn't used before, correcting the spelling error by change the word not to now, again, striking Providence Plantations. So not including the bullet points, just is there a motion to approve the editorial changes presented in red line on page 1?
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
Motion by Commissioner Sylvia, seconded by Commissioner Ruiz. Roll call vote, please.
Aye.
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 Through the chair, before the solicitor continues, mine is in the form of articles, not pages. If you could say what, if it's the preamble or the article as well as the page, Derek? I understood that when I found it, but mine are not listed as pages. Okay.
We're back to pages.
Thank you. On page 2, for the sport, this is Article 2. There is a strike of a bracket around the word A, which is being convicted of crime. I believe that is the only purely editorial change on page 2. So would there be a motion to make that correction in section 2-2?
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded.
Mr. Chairman, I would actually request 2 separate votes on the next matter. Also in section 2-2, it says council members be qualified. It's just a missing word. Really, it's shall, and I believe it would be understood as shall. But since we are introducing a new word, so it's a minor step forward into like a spelling error. We have a motion that A, including the word shall, is an editorial change. B, to approve that editorial change.
I will amend, if you're asking for amendment to the motion, I will amend my motion to include that.
Motion's been amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Tavares. Roll call.
Aye.
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 All right.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, continuing through Article 2 on page 3, I don't see any editorial changes only on that page. Comparing to page 4, here again, I don't see any editorial changes. Here again, on page 5, I don't see any editorial changes. On page 6, we have the missing word. This is section 3-5, so that'll be Article 3, subsection 5, subsection 4, they're under. We are missing the word year. What it says is 6 months of the close of the fiscal in order to complete. So I think the intent is clear that the year is supposed to be there. And then the other change will be in subsection 5, immediately thereunder. Needs to be an additional word that provides no value. It says make sure recommendations. It's just make recommendations. There was a motion to identify those 2 changes as editorial.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Rogers. There a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Silva. Roll call vote, please.
Aye.
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 All right.
Aye.
On page 7, subsection 12, would be Article 3-5, subsection 12. There's again an additional word that says perform such other such duties. So I think it's just perform such other duties. That's the identification of the word such being a different thing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Aye.
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 All right.
Aye. Motion passes.
Chairman, on page 8, I did not see any clearly editorial changes. Again, on page 9, I did not see any clearly editorial changes. And on 10, I do not see any clearly editorial changes. 11 doing purely editorial changes. And on page 12, I'm not doing purely editorial changes. The same with page 13. I would make two requests. One is me being a little bit, Mr. Chairman, when we were moving through each of these sections, you had identified many of the editorial changes yourself in advance. I don't know if you kept record of what you had identified. If you wanted to cross-check that to make sure we found all of them. We did review the meeting minutes, and we did review the video footage of the meeting, but I always appreciate a second set of eyes.
Gladly, thank you.
The other thing I did want to point out for everyone here, not on today's agenda to be put on, but if you look at the structure of the document you have in front of you, we made an effort to try to include everything that was discussed as we move. When you see the bullet points underneath, those are not language, that is not language that is already in the charter. Those were discussion points. So what we'd be looking to do would be to organize the bullet points that you see underneath as the document for recommendation to the council. So you'll see from us for the next meeting is another document that kind of isolates those things out. But in the interim, if the membership has some time, take a look at those bullet points, make sure that we've caught everything that you wanted to be identified and that you agree with those concerns as they've been summarized. And that will help us, I think, move through the next meeting. We'll have a little bit of background.
The commission has homework.
It's one of my first chances to ever get.
Thank you, Dylan.
Through the chair? Just to
Yes.
identify, in section 3-9, city solicitor, it appears that there was another grammatic error which was redlined through, removing a word where it states the city solicitor and assistant city solicitor shall be, removing the word "and" attorneys at law. I don't know if we need to vote on that to remove that one as well.
Good catch.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
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 Aye. If the commission sees no other business for this evening, I will entertain a motion to transmit approval of the editorial recommendations to, before we do that, before I entertain a motion, Dylan, if we vote to transmit these, do you want a time or just the request is enough? I don't want to put undue pressure on the office.
A vote to transmit the editorial changes. as
Yes.
identified. I would just request that we do it after the next meeting because I'm hoping that we can confirm if there are no other.
All right, so that, therefore, we would need to table that for this evening.
Yes,
It's on the agenda.
I'm going to consider it frozen unless someone else identifies something.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion,
I'll make that
Table.
motion to table, Mr.
E.
Chairman.
motion made to table. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Louise. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Aye.
Silver.
Aye.
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 Aye. Our next meeting date needs to be discussed. I discussed with Chairman Furtado, and he is available on March 27th, which is a Wednesday, the last Wednesday in March. I know my calendar is clear that night. Is that a night when we would all be able to convene?
Through the chair,
Yes.
are we asking the solicitor if there's enough time?
Will that give the law department sufficient time?
Yes, so what you will see from us won't be that different from the bullet list that you already have in front of you.
Mhm.
We'll certainly reorganize it so that it's easier to vote on individually. If there is any glaring omissions, anyone identifies that sometime between that, do not hesitate to reach out and let us know.
And could we ask that, as you did for this meeting, we receive those in advance, we receive the document in advance so that we could review it before the meeting? That was excellent.
Now that I have Meg, but the likelihood of that being done well in time.
Thank you.
To the chair. What was that date again?
March 27th?
Mr. Chairman, would you like a motion for that?
Hang on one sec. So that's the soonest we can do that. My only concern being is that we're still going to be short another member, another voting member. Is there any way that we could have that sometime between March 9th and March 18th? So that we could have the full mission? Or is that not?
I'm not available, two of those. The 13th and the 20th, I am not available.
The 27th is fine with me.
Is that okay?
It's fine with me.
Absolutely.
Do we need to vote on that?
It doesn't matter. I don't think I-
I'll entertain a motion that our next meeting be March 27th.
So moved.
Motion is made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Tavares. Roll call, please.
Aye.
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 All right.
Aye. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Silva,
Second.
second by Mr. Luis. Roll call vote, please.
Aye.
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 All right.
Aye. We are adjourned.